Okay, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us this Thursday night. This is the Know Your Rights public webinar brought to you by the Choosing Freedom group over here in Perth, also Citizens for Health Awareness, and in particular our guest of honour presenter is Mike from the Know Your Rights group over East. So we're very excited for tonight. We're going to be looking at how our constitutional rights actually safeguard us from mandatory vaccines, illegitimate lockdown laws that are being thrown around now, and the My Will process and why that is such a powerful process that we all need to tap into. So very exciting webinar ahead of us. We've got about 45 minutes of Mike's time, so we really appreciate that. Just before we get started, want to make sure that we're very clear with the disclaimer, given the times that we live in. This video is for educational or entertainment purposes only and should not be used as a substitute for professional medical advice. So the things that come up today, just understanding that we're not here to give medical advice. We're just sharing perspectives and broadening the conversation around what we as individuals think is a good approach to protecting our own sovereignty and freedom. So hopefully it resonates with many people watching. And before we get into it, we have got Michelle Kinsella from Citizens for Health Awareness joining us. Michelle, if you'd like to share your message with the group, and then we can let Mike start his PowerPoint presentation.
Oh, hi everybody. So I'm Michelle from Citizens for Health Awareness. Everybody's probably seen me, heard me. I just wanted to first off say a massive thank you to James, Louise, Tanya, everybody at 5G who have just done a sterling job, especially over the last 18 months, bringing awareness to everybody. The 5G campaign's certainly hotting up. Thank you to Mike from Know Your Rights for joining us tonight. I received my book in the mail. Sorry, the light's shining on a bit. And it comes with a DVD as well. So that's a fantastic, resource. And you also get some of these great cards, which Know Your Rights. I've already left those in a few little cafes and places like that. So everybody needs to spread the word. There are people out there that can help us. Citizens for Health Awareness, we love to share all the information that we get. I'm also your WA IMOP representative. IMOP was called, until yesterday, Involuntary Medication Objectors Party. It is now, as of yesterday, it's been official. The AEC decided to disregard Minister Hunt and the AMA's lobbying to prevent our name change. So the name change now is Informed Medical Options Party, and they'll be going to state elections soon in Queensland. Now, in terms of who I am and what I'm doing is I fought for human rights in Indonesia for many years, came back to Australia in 2017 and basically was just horrified at what's happening in our country. So I decided kind of at the end of 2017, 2018 to get involved. I worked quite closely with Dr. Judy Wileman. We stood at the federal election last year representing IMOP, and I will also be standing at the state election March 2021. So if anybody wants to get in contact with me, how they can help during the election, campaigning, that'd be fantastic. So I just wanted to say, hi, this is me, and I look forward to having everybody's support in WA. Thanks, James. Thanks, Mike, for tonight. And I guess let's hear what Mike has to share with us. Thanks, Mike.
No worries at all, guys. So I'm going to just essentially just start by running through a quick presentation that we do as part of our live events that we run around the country when we're allowed to run around the country, or when we have venues, more importantly, because we run around the country anyway, but when we have venues that we can actually attend and run these events. So this is a segment on the mandatory vaccination laws, the existing ones. This is the no jab, no pay and no jab, no play laws. So I'm going to run through the presentation quickly, which will give everyone a background to the existing laws, but hopefully everyone can sort of think in terms of the new laws, well, supposed laws, which we'll get to in the presentation, that I know that they've been bringing in as of the 1st of May. If you're a aged care worker or a healthcare worker, they're telling you that you have to have the flu vaccine. Obviously, there's been a lot of talk ScoMo's been saying that we're not going to be able to come out of lockdown until there's a vaccine and until people just sign up for it. And there's talk about whether it's going to be mandatory or not. So a lot of this presentation will have relevance to people who are concerned about that, because it'll all apply. So, okay, so this is just the general presentation. So I'll just whip through anyway. So first and foremost, what actually is the new no jab, no pay legislation? Because a lot of people don't realise what it is. They think it's some new legislation or something, and that's not actually the case. It's actually an amendment to the existing legislation, which was the New Tax System Family Assistance Act of 1999. So it was an amendment to existing legislation. They snuck it in sort of under the radar. They didn't want to bring in something that, new no jab, no pay legislation or anything like that to grab people's attention. They snuck it in, by amending existing legislation. And essentially, as it says, it means to receive the family tax allowance, you have to have your child or your children immunised in accordance with the government immunisation schedule as per the National Immunisation Program. Now, what else it means is that previously children were only checked for vaccination status up to the age of 5 for the family tax benefit, and actually age 7 for childcare payments. But now with this new legislation, they'll be required to comply with all vaccinations until a so-called child has reached the age of 19. Now, I mean, you can drink, you can drive at 18, don't do those two together, obviously. But, you're well and truly an adult at 18, but when it comes to the vaccination laws, they consider that you're still a child until 19, which is just absolutely crazy. And as it says there, parents who don't force their children to have all 12 vaccinations, and that's just by age 12 months, okay, plus all the future vaccinations, simply won't receive the childcare benefit or the family tax benefit Part A supplement. So that's what they're doing to people. That's how they're holding it over people. So it's not mandatory vaccination as such. They're saying, well, you don't have to do it, but if you don't do it, then you won't get this and this and this. And that's how they get around it. So what it actually means is also that parents who don't force their children to have all the vaccinations listed will also not receive the childcare rebates, which essentially for most people means that they just simply won't be able to go out and work, because the majority of families, cannot afford childcare at the full, at the full charge of without any rebates. Now that, as it says there, very clearly constitutes coercive and manipulative measures by using those withholding of financial payments that are in breach of the right to informed consent to vaccination, which is supported by the World Medical Association and all international bills of human rights. Okay, now we've said it on many of our shows, on a lot of my video updates. Article 7 of the Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, okay, states clearly that you are not to be subjected to medical experimentation. Now, to say that every child, no matter who they are across the board, has to have one of these jabs and there's no telling what's going to happen to them, that is quite clearly and obviously medical experimentation. So it's absolutely not allowed. And of course, as we'll show you later on tonight, that same principle will also apply to any employer that says, well, you have to get the flu jab before you can come back to work in an aged care or healthcare facility. It's exactly the same principle. Now, even section 2.1.3 of the Australian Immunisation Handbook states that free and informed consent must be given voluntarily in the absence of undue pressure, coercion and manipulation. Okay, now a lot of people have been emailing us in the last couple of weeks because we've got an entire page on vaccination on our website, which I'll show you after the presentation, and there's a link there to the Australian Immunisation Handbook, and of course our lovely government, because they don't want anyone looking it up, they've moved the link, and so it now says that it can't be found. But anyone that gets our ebook, as Michelle showed earlier, with the CD that comes with the ebook, there is a full PDF copy of that Australian Immunisation Handbook on that CD. Now, the new amendments in clear breach of the Code of Conduct for Good Medical Practice, as well as the International Covenant for Economic, Cultural and Social Rights, which prohibits discriminatory welfare policies and the removal of autonomy over our own bodies. Now, this really is the key, because only you and your creator, God, the universe, whatever your personal beliefs are, only you and your creator have autonomy over your body. Okay, only you have the right to say what should or shouldn't go into your children's bodies. Okay, not anybody else. And this is one of the key principles. No one else has the right to have any authority over your body. So that's the issues, that's the legislation, that's how it came about, and they're the issues with it. So why is it actually unlawful? First and foremost, the legislation or the amendment to the existing legislation has not been lawfully enacted, and there exists no proclamation certificate for it. Now, for those of you who don't know what a proclamation certificate is, that is the evidence of the date of assent, most specifically the date of royal assent, which every law must receive for it to be lawfully enacted within the Commonwealth of Australia. Okay, so neither the originating legislation nor the amendment to the legislation, which I covered before, neither of those have received royal assent, and neither of those have a proclamation certificate. Now, we go into the details of what proclamation certificates are, how to apply for them, how to look for them, all that sort of stuff, obviously in our book, but I just wanted to point it out that that's simply the case. Secondly, it's in breach of section 83.4 of the Criminal Code Act 1995. Now, that used to be section 28 of the Crimes Act, but lo and behold, everyone was looking it up, everyone was referring to it, and so now the government has changed it. They've removed it out of the Crimes Act, and they've installed it in section 83.4 of the Criminal Code Act. And that relates to interfering with political liberty, and clearly states that any person who by violence or by threats or intimidation of any kind, okay, you won't get these rebates if you don't jab your kids, or you can't come to work if you don't get this flu jab. I mean, that's intimidation of any kind. Hinders or interferes with the free exercise or performance by any other person of any political right. Now, a conscientious objector is a political right, okay? Any political right or duty shall be guilty of an offence. Now, that's the Commonwealth Criminal Code Act 1995, okay? So that's a very serious offence. And anyone that forces you to either jab your children or forces you to get a jab yourself, or uses these, threats or intimidation to do that, is guilty of a criminal offence. So please be aware of that. Make sure you look up the legislation, have a look at what the penalties are for breaching that legislation as well. So why else is it unlawful? It's also contrary to section 5123A of the Commonwealth Constitution. Again, anyone who's not aware, anyone who wasn't taught about the Commonwealth Constitution at school, our Commonwealth Constitution is most assuredly still to this very day the highest law in this land. It is still the highest law within the Commonwealth of Australia. There was a lot of talk about the Commonwealth Constitution going back a year or so, where all the senators were being disqualified under section 44, and everyone's all of a sudden talking about the Commonwealth Constitution like, oh wow, it's not just some dusty old book sitting on a shelf behind me somewhere. Okay, it is still most assuredly the highest law in the land. Okay, and all this legislation is completely contrary to section 5123A, and that refers to, as you can see there, the provision of maternity allowances, widows' pensions, child endowment, unemployment, pharmaceutical, sickness and hospital benefits, medical and dental services, but not so as to authorise any form of civil conscription. So saying that you can't come out of lockdown in your house until you get the jab, that would be clearly a form of civil conscription. Okay, and finally it finishes off there, it talks about benefits to student and family allowances. So anything that would affect your access to family allowances, i.e. if you don't jab your child this many times in, as per this schedule, you won't get that family allowance, is contrary to the Commonwealth Constitution. Now, no law can exist, no valid law can exist that is contrary to the Commonwealth Constitution. So again, we explain all this so people understand all the different elements and all the different arguments that are available to them. It's also contrary to the ruling by Justice Latham, and that's in the matter of British Medical Association v Commonwealth. And he stated there, I summarise my opinion upon this question in the propositions that the prohibition of any form of civil conscription prevents any compulsory service being required under a federal law. So if as soon as they say you have to get this jab, that would be a compulsory service. He goes on to say, for the provision of pharmaceutical benefits, that the prohibition applies to piecemeal as well as whole-time compulsion, and determining whether there is a compulsion, it's proper to consider not only the bare legal provision, but also the effect of that provision in relation to the class of persons to whom it's applied in the actual economic or other circumstances of that class. And that's what they're doing with the new no jab, no pay. They're saying, well, you can't get your tax benefit, you can't get your childcare rebate, and that is, of course, targeting most strongly the single parents, single mums, single dads on, Centrelink and pensions and things like that. They're saying, well, you can't get all these things if you don't do that, and that again is clearly contrary to that ruling in that case. So there's some of the issues, and there's some of the actual problems. So we don't like to just give people a whole bunch of problems at Know Your Rights. We like to give them the solutions as well, because that's the most important part. So how can you actually challenge the new legislation? What can you actually do? So you can send a copy of the letter that we have on our vaccinations page to the Minister for Education and Training, the Department of Human Services, and the Governor General. Now, I'll show you that page in a minute, but again, it's just knowyourrightsgroup.com.au/vaccinations, and you can download that letter. If you don't know the address of the ministers and all the rest of it, all the addresses are there, and I'll show you these at the end of the presentation. You just copy and paste those details in. We've also got a very detailed vaccination warranty form that you can also download. And again, we urge you to make your family doctor complete that form, or if he's not prepared, he or she is not prepared, okay, to complete that form, then they are supposed to give you a medical exemption from the new legislation as per Section 6. And again, this would apply just as the same to these new workplace requirements, that you have to have a flu jab or flu vax before you can go to aged care or health care or childcare. It's the same thing. You give them this vaccination warranty form and say, right, well, you put your personal details there. You give me your personal assurance that there will not be any adverse reactions or side effects. And if there are, you agree that I can come after you personally. Now, obviously, no one is going to do that. So therefore, you say to them, right, well, if you're not prepared to do that, basically, if you're not prepared to put your money where your mouth is, then I require you to give me an exemption as per Section 6 of the legislation. Now, this is the thing. Whenever the government brings out any kind of legislation, there's always an out clause. There's always a way around things, because you've got to understand, these people are subject to these laws as well. So they always give themselves out clauses. They just obviously don't promote those and make them well known, but they're always there. So you need to look at them. You need to know where to look for them, and you need to be aware of what they are. All right, so that's the no jab, no pay legislation. You've also got the no jab, no play, which, as it says there, most states have now introduced new legislation that forbids childcare centres from accepting children that are not up to date with their vaccinations. And again, if that was, if that affected you or someone you know, you'd challenge them in a similar way, but you'd write that same letter, which I'll show you in a second, to your actual childcare provider instead. If you were a visitor to an aged care facility, where they're now saying, well, you can't even come and visit an aged care facility unless you've had a flu jab as well. Again, you can use the same letter, you just obviously edit the details to suit, but it's the same principle. So I just wanted to go through this presentation quickly to explain the legalities, explain what the law says, and then show you how you can actually draft a letter that you can use in the particular situation as it pertains to you. So this is the importance of the My Will letter. So as it says, we encourage everyone, whether you've got children or not, whether you're affected by any of this right now or not, to write a letter expressing your will to your local state and federal MP, simply requiring that the wording of the new legislation be changed so that wherever the word must appears, it's simply changed to may or should. We're not saying, listen, you need to throw out the whole legislation, it's a bunch of rubbish, okay, because they're never going to do that. But if enough people write a My Will letter to their politicians, okay, saying all we want you to do is wherever there's a reference to must, just change it to may or should, then that covers you. Anyone who wants to abide by it, great, they can, but they're not forcing you to. Okay. Now, again, I'm obviously compressing an entire section that we do in a 2.5 day event into a 15-20 minute Zoom presentation, so I can't sort of go into the full detail that we usually do. But politicians, again, as we explain in our Commonwealth Constitution section, they exist to do our bidding, not the other way around. We're not there to do what they want us to do. Our politicians are our representatives. They have a requirement at law to represent or represent our will on the floor of Parliament. That's what they're there for. So what they actually should be doing is they should be having public meetings with their constituents once a month, asking their constituents, okay, what is it that you want from me? What do you want me to do for you? You know, how do you want me to help you? And then all the constituents can put forward whatever, you know, arguments, beliefs, whatever it is that they've got. And then that, you know, state or federal MP is then supposed to go away, tally all that up, and then express the will of his constituents or her on the floor of Parliament. Okay, so an expression of my will is the highest expression you can have. You know, people have done a lot of petitions and things like that. Well, a petition, you know, again, when you get the numbers, a petition can be useful, but an expression of your will, because anything that's done without your will is nothing. And anyone who might be a little bit legally minded here, if you've ever seen things like the words, you know, without prejudice, written on documents, you know, lawyers use that all the time when negotiating settlement deals. Those words are there to disclaim the contents of the document. They're to show that it's not being done with your will behind it. It's just a settlement offer. If it's accepted, great, but if not, it can't be used against you, you know, further down the track. So everything comes about your will and your consent, because without your will, without your consent, they have nothing. So showing, you know, sending a my will letter is very, very powerful. So here's a sample letter. I'll just flip through all these things here. Now there is a version of this on our website, and again we've got a couple of these letters and some updated letters, which I'll show you in a second, on the CD that comes with our ebook. But it just if we go to the body of the letter here, it just talks about proposed legislation. Now this could be the, you know, no jab, no pay legislation. It could be in relation to workplace legislation. It could be in relation to any future mandatory vaccination legislation. These letters were used quite successfully in recent times in relation to the $10,000 cash ban bill that they were proposing. A lot of people were sending my will letters saying, no, I don't consent to this bill. So yeah, it all explains here. You know, I know it's my duty to keep you informed as to my will on a particular matter that comes before Parliament or should come before Parliament. It's come to my attention the federal government is attempting to blah, 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 whatever it is, you know, introduce workplace vaccination or introduce mandatory vaccination for the purpose of, you know, reducing the spread of COVID-19 or whatever it is. You fill in the blanks. And it notes that I do not consent or agree to this proposed action, or if it's an existing action, again, I do not agree or consent to this action. And it's my will that you instead make it known to the federal Parliament that it's the will of this constituent that blah, blah, blah be implemented instead, whatever it is that you want to express. I respectfully remind you that your role as a federal member or as a state member requires you to express the will of your constituents and only the will of your constituents on the floor of Parliament. So as you can see, it's a very, very powerful letter that if we've got everybody writing these letters, and again, a lot of people are in lockdown at home now, a lot of people have got a bit of extra time, and you know, heaps of people have been bombarding their local MPs, their state MPs, their federal MPs with this, which is absolutely brilliant. And again, I've said this on a couple of my recent video updates through the Know Your Rights group, that ScoMo came out only last week and said, no, we're not going to be able to leave lockdown until there's, you know, until there's a vaccine and everyone's going to have to take the vaccine. And everyone bombarded him with comments, with letters and all the rest of it. So then all of a sudden he had to backpedal and step back and go, oh, well, look, you know, maybe we won't go that far yet. But listen, we all need to get this app. You know, we all need to download this app on our phone and then we'll be allowed to go. And again, everyone bombarded them with comments, with posts, with letters, with, you know, everything, and said, no, we're not going to, you know, we're not going to consent to being tracked. And now again, we mentioned this just on Tuesday night's radio show. that we said, well, look, ScoMo's, Scammo has backpedaled again, and he's saying, oh no, that won't be mandatory either. We just really like everyone to do it. So we the people, again, as we explain in our live events and as is covered in our book, we the people are the absolute supreme absolute authority in this country. We are the highest authority, not the government. We get to tell them what to do, not the other way around. And people need to keep that in mind, and we the people need to remind our elected representatives of that, because they tend to forget quite a lot. So that's the end of that I wanted to show you. So this is our vaccinations page, the knowyourrightsgroup.com.au/vaccinations, and we've done an interview with Tasha David, who I'm sure a lot of you are aware of. We interviewed her on our show, so you can listen to that interview. And so that's the copy of the interview that we did with Tasha. You can just play that live straight off our website. That's the vaccination warranty form. Again, very, very powerful form. The immunisation handbook. Again, there's a copy of that on the disc that we include with the Know Your Rights book. Okay, so this is the new updated My Will letter. So this is the one that actually comes on the CD with the book, and this can be this is directed to Minister for Social Services in relation to the Centrelink payments, and it's an actual form of a notice, which is even more powerful again, and it actually gets witnessed by a JP. And again, anyone who's read our book or done our live events will know that a justice of the peace, according to the law, is actually considered under Section 2B of the Imperial Acts Interpretation Act, 1901, as a court of summary jurisdiction. So this is essentially a notice that's being declared before a court of summary jurisdiction. So it becomes a very, very powerful notice. So, and again, there's tons of information about vaccines and articles that you can read there. There's a landmark vaccine case that, again, I'm sure a lot of you would be aware of, but there's video links. There's other links to other videos and stuff that you can watch. So there's plenty of information on the actual vaccinations page on our website. Obviously, if you want to go even deeper or further, then we do have our ebook, and as you can see, that's all the different topics that it covers. But most importantly, we've got an entire chapter, as you can see there, on mandatory vaccinations, and it includes a lot more information than what I've sort of just gone through briefly there. It includes all of those letters and everything else as well. So what else does everyone want to know, I guess?
Anything specific around the lockdown laws and the social distancing, and anything in that area that you'd like to share with people?
So, again, there's a couple of issues there, and these are the questions that people need to start thinking about. And once they've sort of got their head around them, to start, actually asking our politicians and parliamentarians, and that is, where did they get the authority to classify this as a pandemic? Secondly, where did they get the authority to declare a state of emergency? So this is the, as you can see here, the Public Health and Wellbeing Amendment Infringement Regulations 2020. Again, no proclamation certificate, has not been lawfully enacted, okay? Has no actual power at law. Now, it's only, as you can, I'm not sure if people can see my screen here, but it's only 5 pages. But you're welcome to look through those 5 pages, and there's no reference anywhere there to police officers. Okay, there is no authority for a police officer to stop and issue you with a fine under these regulations. Okay, now what we've, again, we covered this on a couple of our recent radio shows, that what they're doing is they're issuing these infringement notices under the Crimes Act. But again, there's nothing in the Crimes Act that says anything about leaving a house or COVID-19 or anything like that. But what they do all of this stuff by bluff. Okay, they do all of this stuff through, through fear. okay, hoping that people just go, oh, it's in the Crimes Act, I better just pay up. And there's nothing actually there at all. Now, this does, the public health and wellbeing regulations do say that someone can be delegated the authority other than a medical professional. Someone else can be delegated the authority to issue those fines, but it can only be done by instrument. So again, the first thing that you would ask the officer, okay, is where is your instrument of delegation? Show me your instrument of delegation, because of course they don't exist, they don't have them. So whether they pull you over in a car, whether they come knocking on your door and say we want to come in and inspect your premises or anything like that, first thing is where's your instrument of delegation? Because if you don't have that instrument of delegation, which they don't, they're stopped right then and there. But again,
what's an example, Mike?
Understand this legislation. So yeah.
What's an example of an instrument of delegation? What would that, if
So
they did have it, what does it look like?
It's a formal document, absolutely, that says that, such and such, it might be the chief medical officer delegates authority to such and such person to perform this task. An obvious example is like with the sheriff. So each state actually only has one sheriff. A lot of people don't realize that. All the others are sheriff's officers. So they work as officers of the sheriff's department. So the head sheriff in each state will delegate authority to those, 20, 30, 40, 50 people, whoever's in each state. He will delegate authority to do certain things under the umbrella of the sheriff's office. But they're not actually a sheriff. They're sheriff's officers. So it's the same thing. The chief public officer can delegate authority to issue fines to certain people, but he has to do it by instrument, and it has to be it'd be like when you go and get a job with an employer and you have a formal employment contract. It's an actual instrument. It's an actual document that spells out both your rights and also your responsibilities and obligations too.
So if this was being, sorry, Michelle.
Mike, can I just ask a question? So at the moment, a group of us here in WA are involved in the Exercise Your Rights movement.
Mm-hmm.
So we are exercising twice a week, little plugs, Saturday 2 to 4, Wednesday mornings 9 to 11. Yesterday, actually, what happened, I wasn't there for that one. So we meet near people seem to just congregate near the Anzac War Memorial in Kings Park. That's amazing.
Yeah, all at the same time, wow.
And then we walk down to Parliament House. And of course, we've got signs. One of the ones is something similar to maybe this one, do you know what's in a vaccine? Replicating the billboard that we put up. The signs are questioning the legalities of it and mandatory vaccination. Now, yesterday, apparently the police did turn up. They did come and look at us on Saturday, but they just sat and watched for a little while and then drove off. Yesterday, apparently the police did approach some people exercising and told them that they were actually congregating. And if they didn't move on, then they would get a $1,000 fine. So if we are approached by the police, are you telling me we just actually simply say to them, where is your instrument of delegation? And they are going to reply, blah, blah, blah. How do we respond to that next step?
Okay. So there's a couple of things. And again, I'm just sort of trying to compress, 15 years that we usually compress into 2.5 days, and I'm trying to compress it into sort of 25 minutes. So there's a couple of avenues that you can go down. First and foremost, the minute they approach you, you can just walk away. You do not have to stop and talk to police, okay? DPP versus Hamilton, 2011 Supreme Court case says very clearly, you do not have to speak to police unless you are under arrest, okay? So very clear, you do not have to do anything. Now, if they try and place you under arrest, you have a right to ask, what is the charge? Because if you're placing me under arrest without charge, that becomes a false arrest, okay? And now I can sue you civilly for falsely arresting me. Okay. If they go, no, we just want to talk to you, you can very politely say, well, thank you, but I don't wish to speak to you. I do not consent to engaging in a conversation with you. Thank you. and just walk away. Okay? So there's no need to antagonize the situation or cause any problems. You're well within your rights. And if you want to quote that legislation, you can. Now, if they keep saying, no, but, hang on a minute, I just want to talk to you. Right, officer, are you attempting to detain me? Because if they stand in front of you with their arms crossed or they pull out their baton or something like that, we don't want anything happening. So you just simply say, officer, are you attempting to detain me for the purposes of facilitating an investigation contrary to the Supreme Court ruling of Regina v. Banner? Now, this is a Northern Territory Supreme Court ruling that says very clearly they cannot detain you for the purposes of facilitating an investigation. Okay, so the minute they stand in front of you and stop you, they're detaining you. They're not allowing you to get on about your daily business. Okay, so are you attempting to detain me for the purposes of facilitating an investigation? What are you asking? Because of course they don't know what you're doing until they ask you. I mean, police. You've got to remember, police are trained at this. They pull you, the blue and red lights come on. They pull you over and they go, what's the hurry, mate? Where's the fire? What's the rush? And you straight away go, oh, sorry, I didn't know I was going that fast. Or sorry, I'm trying to rush home to my partners. And bang, you put your foot in it and you give them all the ammunition. Okay, so don't give them any ammunition. You don't have to do anything. Now, there's two really good examples that you can use straight away. Now, if they try and escalate things and say, well, no, we're going to issue you a fine. Okay, under what authority are you issuing that fine? Oh, we've got authority. Well, great. So where's your instrument of delegation? Okay? Because I'm telling you now, officer, with all due respect, I know you're only doing your job, but how well did that work out for the people during the Nuremberg trials? Okay? I know you're only doing your job, but if you issue me with this fine, I will challenge it in court and you will be required to present your instrument of delegation. And if you drag me into court, I will be pursuing costs. I'm just letting you know that now. So would you like to proceed, or can we go on about our business of exercising? That's the book that, I don't know if you can see it there, but that's the book that Michelle held up. And that's the chapter 3. I don't know if you can see that, it might be a bit bright, but that's all the court cases, and it lists all the different traffic related cases. It's got unlawful arrest, unlawful arrest is in there, public transport cases, chapter 3 courts and the validity of certain acts. It's got trespass cases. I mean, trespass is another one. Just stick a trespass sign on your car and on your home to stop anyone from coming in. Banking cases. Corporation has no power over the living. There's heaps and heaps of cases in there. And then, as I said before, you've also obviously got that bonus chapter, which is all on the mandatory vaccinations there. So all this stuff is there in that book, which is why it's just a really powerful resource. And again, like I can give you these things to say, but again, the example I give people, it's like a pickup line. Okay, I give you pickup lines, but if you don't know how to deliver the pickup line with the confidence and everything, it's not really going to help you. But if you're the sort of person that, male or female, that has that confidence about you anyway, you can pretty much say anything. You don't need a line. It's your delivery and your appearance and how you hold yourself and that kind of thing.
And that's your own personal understanding that will come through.
Exactly. And that's really what we've tried to do, with our website, with our book, with our radio shows, is we give people information, of course, absolutely, but we also try and empower them. We try and give them that confidence, because that's the real, that's where the real power comes from, is when you've got the confidence and you have that understanding to deliver these points and these arguments, to be able to just rattle them off. That's where the police just go, what? I mean, there's been already a few videos up on YouTube. Again, anyone who wants to see some of them, they're on our Know Your Rights Facebook page, where people have confronted the police. The police have just gone, all right, well, we're just going to report this to DHS. And they've just walked away. They've just literally walked away. There was one put up last night, which was great. And the guy just spouted off all this sort of stuff, and the cops just went, all right, no worries, we hear what you're saying, mate. No problem. We're not here to engage in an argument. We'll be reporting this to DHS. You might receive a fine. And they hopped in their car and drove away.
So, Mike, I just wanted to ask, we're getting an enormous amount of people ringing and contacting us, which is fine. about the mandatory flu vaccinations for aged care.
Yep.
Now, I rang actually my local member who's ex-police, and gorgeous. I've got to say to everybody, ring your local member of parliament's office, ask them the tough questions, get on the phone, back it up with an email. I'm finding most of the girls that work in the office are actually quite helpful. And of course, once you're on the phone, you can ask your questions. Now, I asked them about this mandatory flu vaccination. And after speaking to probably 6 different ministers' office, I finally found somebody who was actually helpful. And when she got back to me, she said, under the state of emergency here in WA, when that was implemented, they were allowed to enforce mandatory vaccination. Then she said, once the state of emergency is lifted, those mandated flu vaccinations will also be lifted. Is this true? Do you know?
Well, I'm sure that's what they said. So, yeah, look, absolutely not. So as I covered in that presentation before, so what people need to understand is, first and foremost, where did they actually get the lawful power or authority to declare a state of emergency? I mean, you and I can't just go, oh, it's a state of emergency and have anyone listen. So why is anyone listening to them? Where do they get their lawful authority? Now, someone thinks that just because they wear a nice suit and tie and they've got some title after their name that makes them special. No, it doesn't. Unless it can be traced back to the Commonwealth Constitution. Now they go, oh, but that's not right. But absolutely. So again, this is why this book is so good, because it ties everything in together. So Section 106 of the Commonwealth Constitution states very clearly that the Constitution of each state must comply with this Constitution, being the Commonwealth Constitution. So every state constitution also has to comply with the Commonwealth Constitution. And therefore, any state laws must also be congruent with the state constitution, which also must be congruent with the Commonwealth Constitution. So any law has to be lawfully enacted in the name of the Queen's Most Excellent Majesty, which it hasn't been. They have no authority to declare a state of emergency. Any suggestion that any state of emergency, any state of anxiety, any state of anything, okay, has any power or authority over the Commonwealth Constitution is just completely ridiculous. And again, don't tell them, ask them. Where do you get your lawful authority to declare a state of emergency? Where do you get your exemption from Section 5123A? This is the Commonwealth of Australia Constitution Act, Section 51, legislative powers of the Parliament. Okay, so we scroll down to Section 23A. Now, interestingly, I didn't highlight this. This is actually highlighted if you go and look it up online on AusLeague. And it talks about what I was talking about before, authorise any form of civil conscription. So saying you must get this flu jab would be considered a form of civil conscription. So you simply ask the question, where is your exemption from Section 23A, Section 51, subsection 23A of the Commonwealth of Australia Constitution Act 1900 UK? Okay, it's all in how you phrase those questions. Okay, where is your exemption from Article 7 of the Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, okay, which was brought into being via the Australian Human Rights Commission Act 1986, Schedule 2. Okay? If you can't show me your exemption, then it must be deemed that it doesn't exist. Okay? It's like the police. They go, oh, mate, have you got some exemption from the road rules? Oh, well, no. Well, then, what are you doing? You've got to obey them. Well, no, actually, that's not correct, because it's, again, as we teach people, there's no contract, deed, or agreement between yourself and your various RTAs, but that's a whole other video. But yeah, just, it's again, you've got to know these things. You've got to know what to ask, and asking questions is the most powerful thing, as I gave the example before. The police are really well trained how to ask us questions to elicit responses where we're going to put ourselves into trouble. So you want to do to the system what the system does to us. So you want to ask them questions in such a way that it's going to elicit the response that you want to get, that's going to make them either look like idiots or back away or leave you alone or you know, whatever it is.
And an unanswered question in law 3 times, if they're unable to present and they do go silent, is actually
silence is deemed to be acquiescence again. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I know you got to go, Mike, because you're such a busy man at the moment. I love that your work's getting out there, and we've kept you a little longer than intended. I will just ask one question, because we're talking about this fundamental point that I think a lot of people tuning in, they've heard before, but they might not truly understand. So maybe you can just give a quick definition of it. But it's the difference between legal and lawful. And what you're saying, that there's all this legal happenings going on around us, but you're calling it out for being unlawful. And so can you just describe specifically between those two things?
Yeah, absolutely. So legal pertains to legislation. Okay, so statute legislation, you know, those kinds of things, rules, regulations, all that kind of stuff. Lawful pertains only to the law. Okay, so the law, everything. So you trace everything back. Ultimately, it goes back to the 10 Commandments. Okay, so then you trace back from the 10 Commandments, but then you go to things like, you know, Magna Carta, you go to Bill of Rights, which, by the way, are absolutely still valid law here within the Commonwealth of Australia today. Port of Portland versus State of Victoria, only 2010, 7 judges all stated that yes, absolutely, they are still law right now. So everything has to stem back to that true law. And as I said to you, the highest law in this land is the Commonwealth Constitution. So every so-called law, act, rule, regulation, sub-rule, anything that they rely on must ultimately be able to trace, to be traced back to the Commonwealth Constitution. Now that might be via the state constitution, that might be via the you know, an act of parliament that says that it's allowed to enact legislation with regards to whatever, but it all has to be traceable back to the founding law in this country, which is the Commonwealth Constitution. So anything that is contrary to the Constitution is not lawful. It may be legal because a statute, a piece of paper may say that it's legal, but that doesn't make it lawful. Okay, and that's the key distinction. And this again is what they do with bluff, but they go, oh, it's legal. Oh, it's a legal court. Yes, it is a legal court. Okay, a magistrate's court 100% is a legal court. Okay, there is legal documentation that you know, is used to establish the validity of that court. But it's not a lawful court because it doesn't comply with Chapter 3 of the Commonwealth Constitution, in particular Section 71. Okay, so there's a prime example of how something can be legal, but it's most assuredly not lawful. Okay?
Is there
and
any...
They work on bluff and they work on consent.
Is there any accountability there in terms of, you know, them acknowledging that and having to shift over to, you know, a lawful state of governance?
They're not going to shift over to a lawful because they can't. They're corporate courts. They all work under ABNs. So they work to enforce private laws. Okay, and again, all this is, you know, how it all sort of ties in, but this all stretches back to Unidroit, the Noahide laws, all of which we cover in the book. But since 1973, we've all been subjected to private law in this country, not common law. And so, you know, the police, I mean, again, a simple example that you can give to people, and they go, oh, wow, yeah, that makes sense. Okay, it used to be the WA Police Service. They were there to serve the community as part of the government. Okay, but they're no longer the WA Police Service. It's now the WA Police Force. They are there to enforce private laws. They are a private corporation. Again, anyone who's watching this, listening to this, can go and find it very easily. Go and ask any police officer, where does your paycheck come from? And they will tell you it comes from that police force. Now, anyone who works in the health department, anyone who works in Centrelink, anyone who works in the education department will all realise that their paychecks come from the government because they are government departments. The police are not a government department. They're a private corporation. Okay? So this is, you know, this is all the what's happened. We've all had this private law forced upon us. So these magistrates' courts are corporate courts enforcing corporate rules and regulations, which once you understand how it all works, you understand have no bearing on you whatsoever. Okay. Yeah, and again, I touched on one before, Rundle v. Delaware is such an important case because it says a corporation has no power over the living. So a magistrate's court, a officer of a police force, okay, has no authority over a living, breathing man or woman. But again, obviously, you've got to dive into this stuff a little bit more and do a bit more research. And of course, that's what we're all about at the Know Your Rights Group. That's why we bring weekly radio shows. That's why we've got an extensive website. It's why we do the live events. It's why we've got all the books and products and everything, is to start making people aware of this stuff that most people have never given any thought to.
Yeah, and they can find that all through your website. That's knowyourrightsgroup.com.au. You do have a membership area there, so I know there's a lot of comments here and people are saying, wow, what's this, what's that? And there's probably a lot of enthusiasm to learn more. There would be no better place to learn about this stuff, guys, than by purchasing the book and joining the membership site and having discussions with, there'd be a lot of advanced students under Mike's work that could talk about this stuff all day long. So that really is an amazing resource that we all need to capitalize on.
One of our star students, Benny, is actually from WA, and he's an absolute gun. And he's come to some of our earlier events, and he's just absorbed it all. And we actually read out one of the letters that he sent us on last Tuesday night show. And the police prosecutor wrote him a letter saying that basically all 3 charges were being dropped. They weren't offering any evidence. And this was 3 charges that he was already going to court for, and they just said no evidence. So it's really powerful stuff once you start to get your head around it.
Excellent resource, though. I just want to ask something really quickly, Mike. I do have, of course, an immunisation handbook.
Yep.
Just going back to what you mentioned before. Now, this is actually the 10th edition, and which is 2013. I have asked so many medical staff to get me an up-to-date one, people that are on our side, and apparently they're actually quite hard to come by now. This one very clearly does state about informed consent. Now, did I hear you correctly when you said the new one, that part is missing, or what did you...
No, what I was saying in relation to the new one, so it used to be that you could download it as a PDF off their website, but they're not doing that now. The website's being redeveloped, and you can't actually get it from the website at all right now. What they're saying is that they're developing an online version, but of course they're dragging it out and deliberately taking their time to get that available, because they don't want people knowing this information. It's as simple as that. And that's why we do actually include a PDF version of that immunisation handbook on our CD. Yeah.
Great. This is an excellent resource as well. I've read some things in here that I've just gone, hang on a minute. It's really blunt about, vaccine shedding, immunocompromised people, and it is full of contradictions.
Yeah.
Who the herd protects, but then everybody in the herd has to be vaccinated. I thank you so much for touching on, about the mandatory flu vaccination. So I think, can I just check before you go, because I need to type up advice for everybody that's contacting us. So basically, I think from what I'm getting is we should actually really be targeting the Premier's office, our local Member of Parliament, and asking them that specific question about what gave you the right to initiate a state of emergency.
So what gave you the right to declare, to lawfully declare?
Mm-hmm.
That's the key, to lawfully declare a state of emergency. Where is your exemption from Article 7 of the Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, which was brought into force and effect in Australia through the Australian Human Rights Commission Act 1986, in particular Schedule 2. Okay. It also, you can ask them, where is their exemption from the section, sorry, now you've got me.
Sub 23A?
Yes, 23A, yeah. Section 51, subsection 23A, yeah.
Can I be really
of the Commonwealth Constitution? Yeah.
Can I be, if I draw up a letter that we're going to share with everybody, could I zip it through to you just to have a quick check?
Yeah, sure, of course. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. And then we can get all of our members. I mean, we've got thousands to start sending off these letters and actually really querying it.
Yeah. Look, send off those letters. Send off the My Will letters that are on our website. Send off the more detailed one that's on the CD, and start really getting, just hammering them. I mean, again, what do they do with us? They bombard us with paperwork. They send you a fine, then they send you a reminder notice, then they send you an overdue notice, then they send you a final reminder, then they send you a warrant or a enforcement order or something. And they just keep going bang, 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 and we get overwhelmed because we've got all these letters. Now, just imagine, we've got, 25, 26 million people in this country. Okay, so just imagine if we all started writing letters. I mean, there's only a few thousand politicians in the whole country. So 26 million people started writing letters to, a few thousand politicians. They'd be absolutely overwhelmed. They simply, would go to pieces. They couldn't handle it. And, they just throw their arms up in despair. And that's exactly what they're doing to us. People just go, oh, it's all too hard. I can't fight this. We want to do that to them.
Yeah, we did actually have last year when No Jab, No Play was coming through in WA, we did actually have one of the ministers stand up in the hearing, and she actually said, I am absolutely sick of these anti-vaxxers emailing me. And I thought, oh, you've had thousands, haven't you?
Yeah, brilliant. And that's what we want. Yeah. That's exactly what we want. Just bombard them. Absolutely bombard them. Let them know that the gig is up. And look, and again, you can put your own little personal twist on things. And I mean, again, just, it's just simple things, that just obvious things like, how possibly can just giving the same vaccine to everybody indiscriminately be effective? I mean, I gave an example on one of my recent videos. Even something as simple as sunshine, which everybody would think is good for them, is not actually good for some people. Some people are allergic to sunshine. They break out in rashes and stuff. Giving vitamin C, again, it's something pretty basic. You would think that, that it would be universally beneficial to people, but it's not. Some people have reactions and everything to vitamin C. But to say, oh no, but a flu vax is different, that is absolutely beneficial to everyone who receives it, it's just nuts. Makes absolutely no sense whatsoever.
We've just had a comment. Somebody here, sorry, they're in Mullumbimby. I'm not sure if you've been following what's happened. Just before we actually started tonight, I was watching a YouTube video. So, they stopped the 5G, the council ordered a moratorium, and then they've got the cherry pickers in there and they're putting up the 5G. Now, there was some people protesting today, and one got arrested. I did see somebody, I think, was injured by the truck that was, trying to get in to remove the blockade. And the police didn't offer any type of medical assistance to that person at all. I was really shocked. So I guess when this sort of a situation happens, where do you actually go to from here? Do you just stand your ground with the confidence, being empowered, talk about everything you said to us before, and really just stand your ground? And like you said, you don't have to engage.
Absolutely. I mean, this is how they do. It's all bluff. It's all fear. It's all blustering and stuff. And when you stand your ground and you know your rights, it just changes the tables. You don't want to just go in there, yelling and screaming and spouting all this stuff. You just want to be calm, confident, and just go, no, mate, what you're saying is not right because of this, 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 and this. Okay, I hear what you're saying, but where's your exemption from da-da-da? Where's your instrument of delegation? Where's your, just throw these things back at them with just confidence and certainty. Look them dead in the eye and they're just, whoa, okay. Again, the example I give people all the time, it's like you take your car to a mechanic and you go, oh, there's some rattle under the engine. Well, the mechanic's sitting there rubbing his hands going, beautiful, there's a 10 grand rebuild here, because they know that you don't know any better. Now you turn up and go, oh, listen, there's a problem with my alternator, mate. I've checked the fan belt. It's definitely tight. I put a multimeter on it. It's putting out the right voltage, but it's definitely, I think it could be a bearing or something. Can you just check that out? Oh, okay, well, best I'm going to do is a couple of $100 alternator here because, this guy, this girl, whatever, clearly knows what they're on about. And it's the same thing. It's exactly the same thing. It's knowing your rights when you actually know this stuff and you can just fire it back straight away. It just shuts them down. I mean, they're basically just like, not all of them, but essentially a lot of them are just like glorified bullies, schoolyard bullies. And as soon as you stand up, remember, as soon as you stand up to the schoolyard bully, they back off and walk away and like, oh shit, okay, I'm not getting the response that I wanted to get anymore.
Yeah, and that process that you mentioned, being able to confidently relay and express to them that, if they were to continue, that unlawful interrogation, or the way that you worded it before, that if that is to go ahead, then you would look at some type of civil action, and they would be held accountable, and you would be seeking some type of compensation and all of those things. Yeah, there's a lot to learn, but if we can direct that in the right way, then that could stop one of these police from just typically following orders, because they might actually realize that, wow, there could be some repercussions on me.
Absolutely. I mean, and this is the beauty. Again, we've covered this a lot in the last probably 2 to 3 years over our radio shows. A couple of really good cases each and every year where people are receiving like hundreds of thousands of dollars of compensation, because of unlawful arrest. There was a guy who pulled into his driveway. The police lights came on, but he pulled into his driveway, and then the police tried to breathalyze him in his driveway. He said, "Well, I'm in my private property now. You have no authority to step on here without a warrant." And they forced him and all the rest of it, and then they threw him in jail. And he got like hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars of compensation. I mean, there was another guy who was detained on a train platform for like 3 minutes and got like $30,000 compensation, because they had no power or authority to do it. And he knew his rights, and they detained him, and he went to court and got a huge payout. So these things happen all the time, and the police are aware of it. The police have been hearing about these. So as soon as you start to sound like you know what you're talking about, as soon as you start saying, "Hey, listen, mate, I know my rights, and I will take legal action against you. I will pursue you civilly for damages," they're like, "Well, I don't need this," because this is the thing people don't understand. They are not protected by the government. Again, there was a major case. It was about 2 years ago in Melbourne, where 2 police officers, they'd been through, I don't remember exact details, they'd been through some sort of traumatic experience, and so they wanted to, they couldn't return to work. It was all too traumatic. So they wanted to sue the government, for loss of earnings and things like that. And it went to court and was quite high up. I don't know if it was county court, Supreme Court, and the court just said, "But you're suing the wrong entity. It's got nothing to do with the government. You're not an employee of the government. The government doesn't have you back because you don't work for them." So, and they're getting that message. That's all filtered through the, all the internal documents. Don't worry. But so that if they step outside of, their actual powers at any time, they're not covered. Their insurance, indemnity insurance, nothing covers them. So you can sue them civilly, personally, and they will lose their house. They will lose their car. Their family will pay. And so when you let them know that that, they pull away they're just human beings like the rest of us. They're men and women too. Just got, most of them, not all of them, but most of them just got slightly overinflated egos that need to be just pinpricked every now and again and back to reality.
Yeah, and the videos coming out of Mullumbimby with the 5G tower, you can only imagine if all those people there were on the level that you're talking about, where they could express that. I imagine the police would have interacted in a very different way, because eventually they just grabbed, one of the main guys and threw him in the back. But none of that was shared, what you're talking about. So it is really important that we kind of sharpen up on this area, and so that we can, address
as our tagline says, those who don't know their rights have none. Because if you don't know them, you can't exercise them. So basically, they're non-existent. And so many people come to us. "Oh, listen, I just paid a fine. What can now I've found you? What can I do to get it back?" We can't do anything. Once you've copped the fine, you've paid it, you've admitted to it. There's nothing more you can do. You can't backtrack it. "Oh, I just made a claim with the tax department, or lodged a tax return. What can I do to pull it back?" You can't. You volunteered the information. "Oh, I've just been arrested by the police and charged with such and such and such. What should I do?" Well, you shouldn't have said what you said. And that's what's actually got you in trouble. Most of the people who are sitting in jail at the moment are there because they opened their mouths and spoke and gave information that they didn't need to get. Most people who get in trouble with any authorities, whether it's police, sheriffs, court officers, ATO, banks, anything, they get in trouble because they open their mouths and they say things that they didn't need to say. So this is why it's so important to know your rights. That's what the science is all about.
Yeah, we hear you. We hear you, Mike. I guess I'm wondering, there's a lot of people here with the 5G movement. So the 5G issue is, it's a big issue, and we've talked a lot about the mandatory vaccine, but ultimately that takes a doctor to stand there and, inject something inside of you. How is there some way that we can apply your kind of knowledge to the 5G situation where it's kind of just being put up in the distance and eventually going to be radiated from afar?
Yeah, look, absolutely. Again, we covered this in a lot of detail on our last 2 radio shows. So anyone can just jump on our website. You can just go to our radio show page. You can go down. You've got to join up as a member to listen to the podcasts. But you can listen to those. And we talked about, 5G can initially be addressed with the companies who are installing it. Okay. So you can write letters to them expressing your will to those companies that are doing it. You can also be writing those same letters or those same questions to the members of parliament saying, well, where are your peer-reviewed studies? Where are your peer-reviewed long-term studies on the effect of 5G? Okay. If they don't exist, the health ramifications, again, it's the same problem, right? Well, if you don't have those studies, where is your exemption from Section 5123A? Because that's classified as civil conscription, because you are forcing us, to accept this radiation. Where is your exemption from Article 7, which is medical experimentation? You've just admitted you don't have your peer-reviewed studies. You don't actually know what the health effects of 5G are. I don't know. I'm not a medical practitioner. I'm not a studier. I don't know if it's good or it's bad, or if it's 10 times worse than they say it is, or if it's absolutely nothing. But I'd certainly like to know. So where are your studies that show what the long-term effects are? And if you haven't got those studies, where is your exemption to just put them up and subject people to radiation that you don't know what the effects are? That is medical experimentation. So all this stuff can all be just twisted and massaged to suit the situation.
Yeah.
Can I just ask, Mike, in terms of from my personal experience, so I wrote a letter to our school asking if they were looking to implement 5G, if it was available, would they be implementing it in the schools? Would they give parents advance notice? I set out 4 questions. They were pretty clear. And I just got this ridiculous statement back. I don't even know, ridiculous.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I wrote another email and I called them out on that. And I said, look, I asked you specific questions. You haven't answered any. You gave me a blanket response, which is just totally, it doesn't even address my concerns. So let me put this to you very clearly. And in big, huge capital letters on my email, are you going to use 5G in our school? Anyway, so he wrote me back this afternoon. I've just looked then. He's written me back and he said, could you please explain what you mean by 5G, telecommunications and internet? Is this...
It's a big handball. They don't want to deal with it.
It's just a school principal, though. It's just a school principal. I just want an answer, and you still get this ridiculous runaround.
Again, it's like, and again, this is what we teach through all our live events, and it's this process of escalation. So you start just by a simple letter, exactly what you've done. That's totally perfect. They haven't, then you might escalate the wording of the letter a little bit. The next step beyond that is a notice. You put on notice. Okay, and again, these you'll find that in your book and CD and everything. You put them on notice that they are in breach of their duty of care responsibilities. You see, as a principal of the school, as the CEO of an aged care facility, as a CEO of a healthcare facility, all these things, okay, they have certain duties of care to their staff, to the kids, to the visitors, to this is all laid out in their rights and obligations as well. So, but once you understand how it all works, once you know that, you can say, okay, but hang on, but you've got an obligation, you've got a duty of care obligation to do this and this and this. You're not fulfilling, because you're just trying to bury your head in the sand and throw your arms up in the air. Oh, it's got nothing to do with us. It's someone else's. We'll try and handball it off to someone else. No, you are the man or woman in charge. You're the CEO. You're the principal. You're the director of blah blah blah, whatever it happens to be. So this is your responsibility. Now, if you do not respond, if you fail or refuse to respond, this shall be deemed to be a deliberate breach of your duty of care obligations. and shall be treated as such. This document is for and on the public record and may be tendered as evidence in the court, in any upcoming case, anything like that. Let them know. You start putting words like that on documents, it's like, whoa, okay, this is another level again.
And people are asking, can this be used with the council? Can this be used with my daycare centre? And basically anyone that has a duty of care. Absolutely, yeah.
Your councillors, your councillors, your local MPs, they have a duty of care to their constituents. Okay. Again, same thing. If they're putting up 5G towers in your area, and that's an issue and a concern for you, you write to the local council who's in charge of that, and you say the same thing. Where are the peer-reviewed studies that you are relying on to determine that 5G is safe in respect to the installation of 5G towers at this site, this site, this site, and this site? Okay. Now, if they come back and go, oh, we don't have them or whatever, right? Well, now, given your response, it is now deemed that you are in breach of your duty of care because you are subjecting the residents in and around those areas to medical experimentation because you've admitted you haven't got copies of the long-term health ramifications and studies. So again, it's about like backing them into a corner, getting them to give you the answer, and then you just go, right, well, bang. Now that you said it, because you're not telling them anything, they've said, oh, we don't have any studies, bang. Well, now you're in breach of your duty of care, and now you've done this and this, and then they're like screwed because they're the ones who've admitted to it, basically.
And I mean, that corner that you're talking about is a very elusive corner because they're incredibly good at avoiding the questions and bouncing you back and forth between, oh, well, it's ARPANZA, ACMA, ICNIRP, it's all these regulatory agencies that they handball it off to, and they just go in a circle until eventually.
But you see, this is where knowing your rights is so powerful. You can use words like, notice to principal is notice to agent and vice versa. So they can handball it around, but once someone's been notified, as far as you're concerned, they've all been notified. It's up to them to figure out who the right person is. They can't just keep handballing it and asking for extensions. You give them 14 days to respond. You give them 28 days to respond. That's it. Your failure, refusal to provide your formal written responses to this within 14 days, shall deem me to whatever it is, issue with a notice of demand, put you on notice, take legal action, whatever it is that you want to do.
Yep. Awesome, Mike.
Question, sorry. Somebody's just texted. So does all of this though, because what they're trying to allude to is all of this goes out the window, all of our rights under the Biosecurity Act of 2015. It doesn't, does it? Because it still relates all back to...
Where does it show that the Biosecurity Act overrides the Commonwealth Constitution? Where do you draw your claim? Where is the evidence of your claim that the Biosecurity Act overrides the Commonwealth Constitution? Because again, you go and you read the Commonwealth Constitution, it says, every act shall be read and construed with this Constitution. Every act. Well, the Biosecurity Act's only 2015. It's only a few years ago. Commonwealth Constitution's been there since 1900. Everything comes under the Constitution.
And what happens in our situation here where the entire system is ready to enforce the Biosecurity Act, but who is going to enforce the Constitution on our behalf?
We are. We the people. That's the whole point. And this is what I keep saying to people. There are plenty more of us than there are of them. Now, again, the example that we give people, if you've ever been out camping and you've been bitten on the toe by a bull ant, you quickly squash the bull ant and get rid of the problem. Okay, which is what they do to us. One person starts to stick their head up and ask some uncomfortable questions. They try and, squish us down. But if you've ever been out and you've accidentally kicked a whole bull ant nest and you've got like 1,000 bull ants running at you, you hightail and you run. And that's what we have the power to do. As I said, when we get, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people bombarding them with them, they're the ones who are going to hightail and leave. Okay, this is what happened in Iceland. Again, anyone who wants to know the story, grab the Bank Secrets Revealed book. It's such an eye-opening book. And it tells the story about how in Iceland, that they unplugged from the Federal Reserve System and basically all the bankers fled, and those that didn't, they rounded them up and jailed them. And Iceland's economy has absolutely thrived since being removed from the Federal Reserve System. So it's a similar example. There's plenty more of us than there are them. They are absolutely scared of us waking up and finding this stuff out. That is their greatest fear, that we, the people, wake up and understand what they, the wool they've been trying to pull over our eyes for, for all this time, and start fighting back. That is why they are so worried right now. That's why ScoMo, our illustrious leader, is already backpedaling. He's backpedaled on mandatory vaccinations. He's backpedaled on the mandatory phone app and the tracking. He's backpedaling at 1,000,000 miles an hour because he knows he can't get away with it, because every time he says something new, everyone just bombards him. Look what happened with Bill Gates and his silly bloody Marina Abramovich video. Anyone who's looked into that side of things is, knows who she is. They've just bombarded. You've got like 10,000, hate mail and comments and stuff, and he pulled the video. Because people are waking up to this stuff. People are understanding, and they're just going, okay, no more. That's what we want.
Sorry, I just wanted to add. So a couple, or probably not even 2 weeks ago now, a lot of parents would have been told that parents, visitors, workers, basically everybody bar the children, have to have a mandatory flu vaccination to attend early learning centres and childcare. Now, everybody, that come into effect midnight on the Sunday. I'd say they got legal advice on the Monday. Perhaps ScoMo maybe opened his mouth without checking some stuff. By the Tuesday, that had been reversed.
Yeah,
and the Community of Childcare Association put out a release saying that it has removed the recommendation from the 1st of May 2020 that they should not be permitted to enter the facility if they haven't had a flu shot. So I just want to point out that we are very powerful. There are a lot of us. And once you start really questioning, I think thousands of people on that Monday were messaging the minister saying, hang on a minute, how can you force a flu vaccine on me just to pick up my child? And 6 hours had been, completely reversed. So we do have the power. We've got the knowledge. Thank you so much, Mike. Amazing. I do want to put the pressure on, though. Once our borders are open, you guys had better be coming to WA.
We'll be there. Don't worry. It's yeah, for sure.
Yeah, we would love to host you. That would be fantastic, wouldn't it, James?
Well, no coincidence, maybe coincidence, but you were meant to be over here, Mike, I think 1 or 2 weekends ago, which you would have been giving the full weekend workshop, which I know a lot of us were signed up to. So as soon as that's possible again.
Yeah, we'll be there. As I said, no one who signed up is going to miss out. We are, this has been a great test, this Zoom call. As I said, I'm not overly familiar with it all, but the fact that I can talk to everyone and I can share screens and go through presentations and do all this means that we should hopefully be able to move forward with some webinars in the future and just focus on some little segments and still be able to get that information out to people, not only in Perth, but wherever they are around the country. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, if you ever need, a network to work through, then over here in Perth, we will happily connect and help that information reach people, because we really appreciate what you guys are doing over there. It's been a pretty lengthy chat, Mike, so I'm going to let you go because I know your days have been incredibly long and you've probably got a million things to do, and it's 10:30 over on the East Coast. So yeah, I'll say thank you from the Choosing Freedom group to yourself, and thank you to Michelle. You were actually the one that got in touch with Mike, so without your efforts, we wouldn't be here having this conversation tonight. So
pleasure. It started because I got a parking ticket out the front of Parliament House whilst I was visiting a minister, and that just rubbed me the wrong way. It really did. So I thought, I'm going to get Mike's book. I'm going to deal with that. I feel really empowered. I'm quite a confident person anyway, but I do want to give a quick plug to say, hey guys, exercise your rights. Saturday, come along. I feel super confident now, more than ever, now that I've got this information from Mike. I know exactly what to say. I'm happy to be the spokesperson if we are approached by the boys in blue. And I feel it'll go really well. We have had a couple of people say they're a little bit too scared. They heard the police come. We've got the right to exercise. And now we know exactly how to respond to the situation if we are questioned or, well, we just don't participate. But please, everybody, come along on Saturday. It's not a protest. It is a exercise group. Well, not even a group. We're just exercising and we'd love to see everybody. If you want to wear a T-shirt, please keep it clean. We don't want any violence. We don't want any aggression. We don't want any profanities. We want to be civilized. We want to be decent. And yeah, come along Saturday 2 to 4. And yes, we will head down to Parliament House and we just keep following this route that we've been doing. And it's time to stand up. Like Mike said, you know, there are so many of us. If we stand up, and with the social distancing, once you spread everybody out, you've only got to have 30 people and it's this massive line of people. So come along on Saturday. And thank you so much again, Mike, for all your time. Really, really appreciate it.
No worries at all. Thanks for having me on, guys. Appreciate it. And hopefully your viewers and listeners and wherever this is going out to got some good value, and they can you know, feel empowered and go out there and start exercising their rights and learning more about their rights in other areas, and go and bring about some real change, so that when we get out of this whole lockdown, you know, we're all raring to go and ready to fight back, and and design a world that we want to live in, and that's really what it's all about.
Yeah, perfect, Mike. So thank you for the rest of the Know Your Rights group over there. Thank you, Michelle. Citizens for Health Awareness is your page. And thank you to everyone that tuned in. You guys are amazing. A lot of people on Facebook as well. I can't stress the importance of unity and support through this process. There's a lot that we need to learn. Go to Mike's website, knowyourrightsgroup.com.au. Look at the free resources there. If you want to go deeper, then there's books to buy, DVDs to watch, and a membership platform to join through. Also, our group here in Perth is Choosing Freedom Group. You can find us on Facebook. Please connect there. Also, Stop 5G Perth at protonmail.com. You can connect with us through there. Unity really is important as we push forth, because this constriction and loss of rights, it's only heading in one direction. The more time that passes, unless we become educated, the more our rights are going to be stripped away. So this only ends one way if we continue in this trajectory. And if we want to turn ship, then it's important that we connect and we help each other get through this, and we enjoy the process of becoming, you know, empowered again and getting back to the common law and, you know, a healthier, more free way of governance together. So please connect with us, and maybe we'll do this all again soon. If not, yeah, we'll see each other on the different platforms. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys.